Hello everyone, Ember here, and welcome back to a new video. In this one, I'd like to take a look at the many different Articunos of GLC. So what is GLC? For those of you who don't know, it's a single prize only non-rulebox format. It is singleton, except for basic energy, so that does include special energy, by the way, is singleton as well. And only one type are allowed per deck. So if you want to play Articuno on your deck, then you'll have to make a water deck, sadly. But yeah, Articuno. So the first one that we can take a look at here is a one from Black and White Next Destinies and Legendary Treasures, and sadly both of these are, well, they're not very good. Ice Beam for a water double colorless can do 50 damage and flip a coin if heads Polarisis, and credit where credit is due. I love the artwork on the left one here with the Northern Lights in the background. I think that's very cool, very pretty. But aside from that, both of these cards are just terrible. 80 for 4 energy is just painfully bad in this day and age. So yeah, bit of a shame. The artwork is lovely, but definitely more of a collector's card than something you could play in GLC, realistically. Next up, though, is we have a one from Roaring Skies, and there's actually two Articunos from Roaring Skies, but the other one has sort of like a pseudo reprint, which we'll take a look at in a second. But this one is definitely, I think, the best Articuno in GLC. It's definitely one that sees a lot of play. It has the Ancient Trait Plus, which doesn't count in his ability, but is a special effect for Articuno, which reads, if your opponent's Pokemon is knocked out by damage from an attack of this Pokemon, you get to take one more prize card, which is lovely, because it basically just turns all these single prize Pokemon, which are the only Pokemon that are legal in GLC, into two prize Pokemon. Now, of course, there is a bit of a caveat here. Articuno's two attacks are pretty subpar. Chilling Sigh allows you to put your opponent's active Pokemon to sleep, which can be good. If they stay asleep, then you can get a KO with this, which is nice. But yeah, Tri-Edge for 2 water and a colorless, which is your only way of taking multiple prize cards on this card, does 20 damage, and you flip 3 coins, and you do 40 more damage for each heads. So if you only flip 1 heads, basically, you're only going to do 60, which is terrible. 2 heads, you're doing 100, which isn't that bad, and then 3 heads, you're doing 140, which, that's reasonable damage for 3 energy, but you still have to flip 3 heads. So this card is a bit of a menace. There will be times where you just fluff up the coin flips, even with stadiums like Glimwood Tangle, to reflip the coins, rather. Or, what's that tool card called? Trick Coin, I think it is, the one that allows you to reflip your attacks. But, there is ways of manipulating this, right? But at the same time, there is going to be turns where this goes horribly wrong. But, still a very powerful Articuno at the end of the day. Next one, though, is the same one from Roaring Skies. And yeah, it got a reprint in Roaring Skies, and then it got like a pseudo reprint in Generations with this lovely new artwork. I really wish, honestly, that this artwork had been for this Articuno, and it was this Articuno that got reprinted with a full art, but sadly not, because this one is pretty subpar. The attack Find Ice allows you to search your deck for up to 3 water energy cards, reveal them, put them into your hand. It's whatever, but you'll quickly find out in most games that, you don't want to have to spend an attack to find energy when there's so many items that can do it for you. So yeah, it's a bit of a shame because the artwork is lovely, but sadly the attack is just aggressively subpar. It's just, it's whatever basically, which is a shame, again, because that artwork on the right is lovely. It's adorable, but yeah, pretty bad card overall. Next up is we have a Sun and Moon promo, which does have a fairly interesting attack, Sheer Cold, which only does 100 damage, but flip a coin if heads a defending Pokemon can't attack during your opponent's next turn. Now, I don't think this attack is particularly good. It's a very subpar card. However, I do think it's interesting that there is quite a lot of water types that do similar things. Like the Seadra from, I think that was from Paradox Rift or the set 151. You've also got Glasteer, which does it, but just for basic Pokemon, and you've got Beartic, which just outright stops a defending Pokemon from attacking. So, some interesting options if you wanted to build a deck around this. More of a meme deck really than anything, but, I just thought it was interesting and worth mentioning, really. So, something to bear in mind, I guess, if you decide to use this Articuno. But at the end of the day, nothing too crazy. Next up is we have a one from Sun and Moon Team Up. Now, this one is pretty strong, actually. It does have the ability Blizzard Veil, which says, as long as this Pokemon is your active Pokemon, whenever your opponent plays a supporter card from their hand to prevent all effects of that card done to your benched water Pokemon. And then Cold Cyclone for 2 water energy does 70, but you move 2 water energy from this Pokemon to one of your benched. So this guy has pretty decent synergy with other water type Pokemon that you might want to power up, of course, because your opponent will not be able to use a boss's orders around this Articuno. They'll just have to KO it, and all the while you're just sitting there doing Cold Cyclone, hopefully, to charge up energy to your other Pokemon. So Pokemon with like expensive attacks like this Lapras or this Black Kyurem, for example, could be pretty good here. But aside from that, it's just one of those things where you have stuff like Baxcalibur in the format and Frostmoth and Blastoise to accelerate energy. You don't really need this guy. So it is, I think, maybe better as just a wall Pokemon that your opponent has to KO before they, get to whatever you're preparing on the bench. But at the same time, I don't think that's a terrible option. Maybe you just get one Cold Cyclone off and then you let Articuno, sadly die or whatever. And then you come in with your next attacker. But still, something to consider, and definitely, if you don't have a Baxcalibur or Blastoise, even though I do think Baxcalibur is pretty cheap nowadays, but yeah, something to consider at the very least. Next up, though, is we have a one from Sword and Shield Pokemon Go. This does have very cool ability Ice Symbol, which allows your basic water Pokemon's attacks, except any Articuno, to do 10 more damage to your opponent's active Pokemon before applying weakness and resistance, which is quite nice actually. There's some cheap energy basic attackers, Keldeo and Lapras, just to name a few. But yeah, pretty solid. More damage is always welcome. Of course, the caveat here is this Articuno itself is a pretty bad attacker. Paying 3 energy just to do 110 without no additional effects, I would say is pretty subpar. But aside from that, the ability is pretty fun. You could make something out of this. Is it good? I think this is more like a 5 out of 10 kind of situation. Like, the ability seems strong, but the card itself, you're paying a bench slot, a deck slot, all the rest of it, just add plus 10 damage. I'm not really sure if it's worth it, to be honest, but aside from that, it is a fun card at the very least. You could do something funky with things like Keldeo, so yeah, seems quite fun overall. Then we have a one from Soul and Shield Silver Tempest, and this has the attack Wild Freeze, which for 2 water energy also does 70 damage actually. But this Pokemon also does 50 to itself, and your opponent's active Pokemon is now paralyzed. So, thumbs up for Polarisis for 2 energy, also doing 70 damage. That's lovely. Of course, the downside here is 50 damage to yourself. So even if you set up this infinite Polarisis thing where you just paralyze whatever your opponent sends up, sadly, you will carry yourself eventually due to the 50 damage, self-inflicted damage. However, you could attach a Protection Cube from an XY set that allows you to prevent all damage done to Articuno this card is attached to by attacks it uses. So Protection Cube would protect you from the 50 damage, which is nice. But aside from that, I don't think there's any other ways, really. There might be a stadium that prevents it. I can't actually remember, to be honest, but let me know in the comments if there is indeed a stadium or water type ability that would do this for you. But yeah, this tool card here is here for this. But sadly, aside from that, I don't think this card is particularly impressive. You're only going to get like maybe 1 or 2 uses out of this Polarisis. Maybe that can win you the game. But aside from that, it seems kind of niche, to be honest. So yeah, not my favorite, but I can definitely see the appeal. Then we have a one from Sword and Shield Brilliant Stars. Oh, wait. That's my mistake. This is not Sword and Shield Brilliant Stars. This is 151, actually. This is Scarlet and Violet. A bit of an error on my part. But yeah, this Articuno has the powerful ability Ice Float that says if his Pokemon has any water energy attached to it, it has no retreat cost. Then it has the powerful attack Blizzard that for 3 water energy is 110 and 10 damage to each of your opponent's bench Pokemon, which is quite a fun spread option. If you want to pair this up with stuff like the Frostlass or Blastoise to get the energy on there, then you could use other things like Frostlass to put the ability Freezing Shroud into play. During Pokemon Checkup, put 1 damage counter on each Pokemon that has an ability, both yours and your opponent's, however, so you will have to be careful that you don't KO your Articuno or Frostmoth, for example. But yeah, that's kind of a funny option if you want to do it. And you've even got this Krabby, which someone suggested should be its own video. Sorry, no, Krabby will not get its own video. Maybe Kingler, though. Kingler might get its own video, but yeah. Krabby does have the attack Aqua Shower, which does do 10 damage to each of your opponent's Pokemon, so again, some synergy with Blizzard, but yeah, this one from 151, to highlight that again, I know, my mistake. It's not a Brilliant Stars card. It is from Scarlet and Violet, 151. But yeah, seems like a very fun card, to be honest. I could definitely see this being a lot of fun to mess around with. But yeah, pretty solid. But yeah, thank you for watching. I do a new set review for GLC with each new release, so do subscribe if you're interested in being updated, although I might split the Paradise Dragona one with a Supercharged Breaker. just because there's, I think, going to be a lot of cards in that set. So I think it just makes sense to give more attention to more cards, basically. But this is now a series to stay, so let me know which Pokemon you'd like to see in the future. There is a list for getting through them, and a playlist has been made if you want to see all these videos in one place. And if you want to if you want to dive into the competitive side, I should say, OmniPoke and the format creator, Tricky Jim, have both done fantastic videos and guides for each type. But many errors and misspellings and mispronunciations aside, hope you enjoyed today's video. Let me know what you think about Articuno down below for GLC. And yeah, thank you for watching.